só vi o Igor chutando o vidro, o Igor ameaçando o Mário e depois o Mário saindo de cima do Igor. E aí eu vi o meu irmão jogado no chão, fiquei apavorado e o Mário falou, vem comigo, eu fui.
Rafaela Costa was dubbed the cheating wife who brutally killed her husband after sleeping with his brother. But what if I told you that wasn't even the most twisted part? Igor Peretto was stabbed more than 40 times. He was left bleeding on the floor of his sister's apartment, and hours before the murder, Rafaela was caught kissing that sister on camera. So was this just a night of drunken chaos? Or are we looking at something way darker? A conspiracy fueled by sex, money, and blood? Stick around. This is the stomach-turning case of Igor Peretto. There's no sound, but the image says enough. Igor Peretto, 27 years old, stands in the elevator holding his phone. Right next to him is Mario Vitorino, his business partner, his best friend, and the man he once called family. After all, he was his brother-in-law, but this time, both men were clearly tense. Igor's mouth was moving fast. Mario looked cornered. The timestamp read 5:44 a.m. Less than 30 minutes later, Igor would be found dead. Not just dead, butchered. Slashed across the back, chest, and face. He had over 40 stab wounds, as deep as they could get, and blood was spattered throughout the apartment. When first responders entered the apartment, they found a literal trail of blood leading them to Igor's body. He had fought for his life until the very last second. But let's rewind. The night of August 30th, 2024 was an eventful one for Igor's circle of friends. Just an hour before, Rafaela, Igor's wife, had taken the same elevator with his sister, Marceli. The two women had been out drinking together. They got back to Marceli's apartment around 4:30 a.m. and went upstairs. Alone. Then Rafaela left. Alone. 13 seconds later, Igor and Mario arrived. And the second that elevator door opened, the fuse was lit. Cameras show Igor storming in, phone still in hand. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to be asleep at his mother's. But something had changed during that car ride with Mario. Something that made Igor furious enough to follow him into an apartment he didn't belong in. Marceli would cry on TV about it.
Eu nunca quis que isso tivesse acontecido. Eu não sou nenhuma traidora. Eu sofro todos os dias aqui.
But let's just see if, by the end of this case, you'll believe her words. Neighbors would later report hearing shouting. Not normal shouting, the unhinged kind, loud enough to wake people through concrete walls. By the time police arrived, summoned by the neighbors, the apartment was a wreck. The front door was locked. There were no signs of forced entry, just a mess of broken glass, blood trails, and a body crushed under a mirror. A knife was left in the bathroom, and no one was inside to answer the door. The building manager had to call a locksmith. That's how bad it looked, and how fast everyone had fled. But the worst part wasn't what they found. It was who the apartment belonged to, because that was Marceli Peretto's place, the victim's sister. And according to timestamps, she and Mario were seen leaving together, using the stairs, not the elevator. They didn't want to be seen, and trust me, we're just getting started. Before he became a headline, Igor Peretto was just a young father trying to make his life work. He was 27 years old and a self-made entrepreneur in the coastal city of Praia Grande, Brazil. He owned a car dealership, a motorcycle shop, and a marketing company. His name actually meant something in his town, and his family couldn't be prouder of him. He had two sons, one from a past relationship and one with his longtime partner, Rafaela Costa. They met in 2018. She was a year younger, beautiful, and magnetic. She worked at a mall kiosk selling phone cases when they got together. But after their relationship became serious, she stopped working altogether. Igor paid for everything. Her expenses, her plastic surgeries, her vacations, even when her vacations didn't include him. They looked like a power couple online. In real life, they were anything but. Now here's where the story gets a bit wild, because Rafaela wasn't just Igor's wife. She was also sleeping with Mario Vitorino, Igor's best friend, business partner, and brother-in-law. And Mario, he was married to Marceli. It was what people called one big happy family. Dinners, birthday parties, vacations together. But underneath that picture-perfect image was something that defied logic. Because according to testimony and police findings, they were all sleeping with each other.
Em depoimento à Polícia Civil, Rafaela afirmou ter trocado carícias e beijos com a irmã de Igor, que é a Marceli, pouco antes dos homens chegarem no imóvel.
Yep. Not only was Rafaela cheating on Igor with his best friend, she was also caught on camera getting intimate with Marceli, his sister. Here she is in a prison interview, talking about it like it was no big deal.
Aconteceu que eu e a Marceli trocamos uns beijos, umas carícias. Logo em seguida,
the women had gone out drinking just hours before the murder.
A Rafaela me chamou para ir num bar em Santos, no Capitães. Aí chegou lá, a gente bebeu. E depois dali a gente ligou pro meu irmão, pro Maurício, pra gente estar indo pra festa que tava acontecendo no José Menino.
They arrived at Marceli's apartment together at 4:32 a.m., visibly buzzed. Surveillance shows them holding each other in the elevator, laughing. Minutes later, Rafaela left. Then Igor arrived, with Mario, and that was the last time Igor was seen alive. But here's the part that made even the detectives go. What the hell are we looking at?
De acordo com a denúncia recebida pela Justiça, a morte de Igor traria vantagem financeira a todos os três acusados.
This wasn't some messy affair that got out of hand. It was way more deliberate than that. Rafaela and Mario had been texting in secret, deleting messages, even screen recording their calls. And the weirdest part? It's not like Marceli was in the dark either. She knew what was going on between her husband and her brother's wife, and instead of blowing it all up, she got tangled in it in every way possible. One message mentioned a celebration that night. Another confirmed their plan to spend the night together once Igor was gone. And yes, Rafaela ran off with the happy married couple after the murder. The police didn't just see a crime of passion. They saw a triangle, actually, a square. Every line between these people was crossed. And the deeper they looked, the more it reeked of premeditation. But if they were all in on it, who actually wielded the knife? That's what we'll dig into next. August 30th, 2024, Praia Grande. By midnight, the lines were already drawn. Rafaela and Marceli were out drinking in Santos. They'd met for dinner, shared a few cocktails, and then headed back to Marceli's place together. On the other side of town, Igor and Mario were at a party with Igor's brothers, but nothing about that night would stay friendly for long. After Rafaela left Marceli's apartment, Igor and Mario arrived in Mario's car. That gap, 13 seconds, was all it took to tip this night into catastrophe. What happened in the car just before they pulled up is what investigators believe set everything in motion. Mario's phone was connected to the car's multimedia system. While he was driving, a call came through. The name that flashed on the screen, Rafaela, Igor's wife, labeled as sister-in-law. Igor saw it, and something snapped. He demanded answers. Why was his wife calling Mario in the middle of the night? He started calling Rafaela, blowing up her phone and checking her location. And that's when he saw it. She was at Marceli's apartment. He told Mario to drive him there. Now! By the time they entered the building, Igor was already furious. Betrayal, suspicion, alcohol, and adrenaline were swirling.
Me questionando por que a Rafaela estaria ligando para o Mário. E eu falei, como eu vou saber? Eu estou dentro do apartamento. Não tem como eu saber. E ele já começou a xingar o Mário.
What happened next would make headlines across Brazil. But first came the blood. The scene was chaotic, but not random. When police finally entered the apartment, they found a story told in glass shards, footprints, and silence. The trail began in the hallway, smeared across the tiles, and tracked through the living room. Most of the furniture was upside down. In the bathroom, a kitchen knife sat soaked in a pool of red. And in the bedroom, crushed beneath a fallen wardrobe mirror, was Igor's body. But what stood out most wasn't the violence. It was the precision. Forensics confirmed Igor had been stabbed over 40 times. Most wounds were on his chest, head, and back, suggesting he was attacked from multiple angles or chased through the apartment. One blow would have been enough to kill. This was overkill, to say the least. And according to investigators, the killer didn't grab a weapon in panic. They went into a drawer, pulled out a sharp kitchen knife, and used it repeatedly. The running theory? Mario stabbed Igor during a fight inside the bedroom, and Marceli didn't stop him. In fact, she may have helped cover it up. She claimed she heard arguing while she was in another room, putting on clothes. She claimed she returned to find Mario already over Igor's body, but investigators didn't buy it. For one, she never called for help. Two, she left the building with Mario, the man who'd just killed her brother, and didn't look back. And here's what really tore that excuse apart. Mario had injuries on his face and hands. His lawyer claimed they were from Igor. They hadn't even reached trial yet, but police were already convinced this was a cold and calculated slaughter. And here's how they realized the whole gang was in on it. Marceli left the building with Mario and casually took the stairs. Surveillance footage shows them exiting through the basement garage and disappearing into Mario's car.
Tem ou não ligação com a morte do próprio irmão?
Difícil, hein, Lombardi? O que você acha?
Muito difícil, difícil. Porque se sou eu falo para ele assim, ó, vem cá, você pode fugir, eu vou chamar a polícia, mas eu vou chamar o SAMU para socorrer meu irmão.
And their first stop, a gas station off the highway. Waiting for them there was Rafaela. She wasn't frantic or screaming. She was just standing there. From the moment they linked up, The group moved like they were already in escape mode. They drove north, ditched the bloody clothes, and checked into a motel in Pindamonhangaba, nearly 200 kilometers from Praia Grande. Inside that motel, Rafaela bought Mario a new outfit. He showered, changed, and cleaned himself up calmly and methodically. Later, Rafaela told police she didn't know what to do, that she was in shock.
Os dois muito nervosos, eu perguntei, o que aconteceu? Preciso saber o que aconteceu. A Marcele me diz que o Igor não estava mais com vida, que o Mari teria matado o Igor.
But then why did she go with them to the motel? Why help clean up? Why flee? Investigators believe this was the moment the cover-up began. The decision wasn't just to run, it was to erase. And Marcele didn't go home. She didn't call her family. She stayed with the man who'd murdered her brother. That silence told police more than any confession ever could. They were no longer treating this as one man's violent outburst. They were starting to wonder how long they'd been planning this. At first, it looked like chaos, a chaotic life with a chaotic, impulsive, furious ending. But the more investigators uncovered, the more deliberate everything seemed. According to the indictment accepted by the São Paulo court, all three, Rafaela, Mario, and Marcele, had something to gain from Igor's death. Rafaela would inherit Igor's businesses as the mother of Igor's child. Mario would become the sole owner of the motorcycle dealership they co-founded. And Marcele? She was tied to both of them, Igor's sister, Mario's wife, and stood to benefit by default from the financial reshuffle. But the motive wasn't just about what they'd get, it was about what was in their way. You see, Igor had started asking too many questions. He was checking locations, exploding with suspicion. The confrontation in Mario's car wasn't random. It was triggered by a call from Rafaela in the middle of the night. After the murder, when Rafaela was driving away, she got a chilling message from Mario. Something about Mario saying he'd had to drug Igor to calm him down. The police never released that text. If that sounds like someone covering his tracks, it gets worse. Police later found search history suggesting the trio had looked up how long it takes for a body to start decomposing. To stink. That's not something you Google if you're panicking. That's something you plan. The São Paulo Public Ministry issued a statement calling them highly dangerous for having planned the death of someone close to them, and for having done research on how long it takes for a body to stink. And then came the line that rocked Brazil. If they do this to someone they swore they loved, what would they not do to us or to the other people they live with in society? By the time the court denied their release in July 2025, prosecutors weren't just accusing them of murder, they were warning the public. And speaking of the public, they got more than a horror show when these guys' trial started. By the time the trio faced a judge, the public was already done giving them the benefit of the doubt. The court had surveillance footage, call logs, text messages, and testimony that painted a picture more disturbing than anyone expected. But what really ignited public outrage wasn't just what they'd done, it was how they acted after. Mario Vitorino, the man accused of stabbing his best friend over 40 times, was spotted smirking during pre-trial hearings. Marcele Peretto, Igor's own sister, gave several conflicting statements. In one interview, she claimed she was asleep. In another, that she heard a commotion. Then she said she saw Mario getting off of Igor.
Falam que, eu tive participação, não tive participação de nada. Eu não tive. Eu realmente só vi o Mário saindo de cima do Igor.
But never once did she admit to calling for help, or even to being sad about her brother being gone. And when pressed about fleeing the scene with Mario, she shrugged it off, said she was scared. She simply said that he told her to go, and she was following his orders. But the footage showed her calm, like she'd rehearsed this moment in her head before. Rafaela, meanwhile, pulled off one of the most surreal stunts of all. She got married in prison. Yes, the same woman accused of conspiring in her husband's murder tied the knot while awaiting trial, with another female inmate. The press had a field day, but none of it compared to what the investigators uncovered in her digital history. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was a search Rafaela made before the crime. How long does it take for a body to start smelling? Yep, that was her. This trial became one of the most mediatized trials in Brazil's recent history. It wasn't just a murder trial, it was a symptom of how far betrayal can go when justice feels slow, lives are disposable, and love is treated like leverage. The public didn't just want answers anymore, they wanted a reckoning. And for once, Brazil was asking, will anyone actually pay for this? As of July 2025, all three suspects remain in pre-trial detention. And despite the mountain of evidence, not one of them has confessed to the murder. The charges? Aggravated homicide. Prosecutors allege the trio acted with vile motive, using means that prevented the victim from defending himself. The maximum penalty for this in Brazil is 30 years in prison per person. But here's the catch. Brazil's judicial system is slow. Testimonies keep shifting, witnesses miss hearings, and the defense, they're trying to delay everything, even filing for a second autopsy on Igor's body. That's where we're at right now. Meanwhile, the country is spiraling over this case, almost like a really bad soap opera crossed with a horror movie. But this is the real world, and a lot of people are suffering for Igor's loss. Think of his parents. His mother says she can't stop crying. And think of his 2 children, too. Now, his youngest has lost both his parents, as his mom is in jail awaiting trial, and he's gonna have to grow up knowing she had a role in unaliving his dad. That's a heavy cross to bear. Meanwhile, Rafaela continues to deny her involvement. She says she fled because she feared for her life, and she's crying on live TV about how unfair it is that she's in jail.
Eu não tive a oportunidade de ir no velório, eu não tive a oportunidade de ir no enterro, eu não tive a oportunidade de ver meu filho. O que eles estão fazendo é cruel comigo, eu não estava na hora.
Mario claims it was self-defense, and Marceli, she gave an interview from prison that left the public cold.
Eu nunca quis que isso tivesse acontecido, eu não sou nenhuma traidora. Eu sofro todos os dias aqui.
But the footage tells a different story. She walked out beside her brother's killer, even hugged him on camera, minutes after the slaying. The prosecution believes all 3 plotted to kill Igor for financial gain, and to remove the one person who still stood in the way. They allege that Marceli encouraged it, Rafaela lured him in with that call, and Mario executed the plan. And yet, there's still no conviction. So what happens next? If the court agrees to send the case to a jury trial, public will get to watch them answer for every action, every lie, and every disgusting smirk. But if it stalls in pretrial limbo, the trio could walk. Or worse, be convicted of lesser charges with shorter sentences. There's no guarantee justice will win. Not in Brazil. Not anywhere. All we know is this: Igor Peretto loved the people who ended his life, and no matter what happens in court, his sons are growing up without him, while the 3 people who destroyed their families still argue over who's less guilty.